Hello and welcome. In this video, we will be talking about Vagrant. So far, we have understood what is Vagrant. We have created VMs also automatically through Vagrant. We have seen some Vagrant commands. We're going to see a few more Vagrant commands now. We'll be also seeing a networking through Vagrant. We'll see how we can allot IP addresses to our VM as per our need and change some port numbers. We'll be seeing provisioning. If you want to execute some Linux command when the VM is coming up, we can do that through Vagrant. We'll see how we can change the RAM, CPU and disk utilization or disk size. We'll see how we are going to create multiple VMs through a single Vagrant file. And we'll also go through the documentation of Vagrant. So we know a Vagrant is going to pull the image from Vagrant Cloud, Vagrant Box and bring up the VM. We can make changes to Vagrant through Vagrant file or to the VM through Vagrant file. We'll see simple commands of Vagrants to read or reload Vagrant file configurations. So let's get started again with Vagrant. So let's go to my F drive. Vagrant VMs, and I have two directories, CentOS 7 and Ubuntu 18. Both has its own Vagrant file. So let's go to Ubuntu 18. There is a command Vagrant global status to see the status of all the VMs that we have, and it will also show some stale information. So you can run this command to remove old information. Okay, let's run the global status command once again. Now it should show the correct information. We have two virtual machines running with Vagrant, and that's the path. I'm already in this path, and if I say here Vagrant status, it should show me status of my virtual machine in the current directory. So it says it's running. And if I want to stop this, I can use Vagrant halt. We know there is a Vagrant file over here. You will also see a log file for Ubuntu. If you do ls-a, -a is to show all the files including the hidden ones. A hidden file starts with dot. So if you create any file which starts with the name dot, then that file will be hidden. So when you do Vagrant up first time, it's going to create this hidden directory and it will have information of the VM that is created here. So when you run Vagrant status command, or when you run Vagrant halt, Vagrant up or reboot, destroy, it's going to read this directory for the information about the VM. And we'll see more information about this directory later. For now, we'll be seeing a Vagrant file. So if you want to make any change to the VM, you can open the Vagrant file. You can use vim editor from git bash and open the Vagrant file and make changes. If you want a graphical editor, then we can go to the file explorer. It's Vagrant VMs, Ubuntu, and I'm going to first close this file from my git bash. Okay, and let's use Notepad++. So right click on the Vagrant file, say edit with Notepad++. Okay, so this is a long file with 70 lines. And most of the lines are ignored because they are commented. A hash is a comment. So this basically is a Ruby script. And Ruby interpreter is going to ignore any line that begins with hash. And that is also for bash scripts and Python scripts. We're going to see that later. For now, you have to understand just this much. Wherever you see hash, that lines will be ignored. So they does not exist. They are invisible for the interpreter. The line that is not commented is line number 8 here. Vagrant.configure2 do config. This is where the code starts and it completes where you have end. In between this, you have all the Vagrant settings, or most of them, and only one setting is currently you see is uncommented, config.vm.box and the box name. While we created VM manually, we have created a bridge interface. If you want to do same through Vagrant, then we are going to see a setting config.vm.network public network. Now, all the settings should start with the name config. So I'm going to highlight that. You see config box, config VM network, again config.vm.provider, config.vm.provision. So all the setting will start with the word config, because here you see the config. That's basically a class object. If you're a programmer, you'll understand that. But if you're not, just understand this, that whatever you see in between these two pipe symbol, all the settings inside that will start like that with the same name. So if I give here, let's say Imran, then all my settings should start with that name, then Imran, like that. But we're not going to do that. We'll just keep it as it is. So we're looking for config.vm.network. Let's uncomment this line, remove the hash. So public network, this really means set me a bridge interface. Give me one more adapter which is connected to bridge network. And that is going to fetch me IP address from my Wi-Fi router. If I uncomment this line, config.vm.network, private network, then I can have a static IP address. IP colon, in double quotes, you can give an IP address. Make sure it does not overlap with your network IP address. So third octet, set something else, like, maybe 25.12. Just make sure it does not overlap with your network address in the command prompt if you run ipconfig command. At 192.168.0. So, the third octet, make sure it's not same. So we have 25 here, and then whatever IP you want, you can give. So this is going to set a static IP, and this is going to fetch an IP address from wireless router. So it's going to be dynamic, but this is static. So private network IP colon, and you get the static IP. Public network is bridge interface really. Okay, with that, I would also like to change the RAM size. So by default, Ubuntu box will have 1 GB of RAM, but if you want to increase that or decrease that, we can set that. You have setting over here from line number 52 to 58. Just uncomment line number 52 and uncomment line number 58. Okay, so that's a setting. So that's a sub block, you can say, inside the main block of code. For config.vm.provider, virtualbox 2 VB. And then all the setting inside that will be like this: vb.memory, and you can have vb.cpu. So I'll uncomment this vb.memory. And I would like to give around 1.5 GB of RAM. So let's say 1600 MB. So it's in MB. Likewise, if you want to give some CPU size, you can say vb.cpus, number of CPUs. Right, so we have VB over here. So all the setting will be like that: vb.memory, vb.cpus. So I will say give me just one CPU. By default, Ubuntu box will have 2 CPUs. So I want to reduce that. I want to give it just 1 CPU. Or let's just give 2 CPU anyways. Okay, so we have given the public network, which is bridge IP, a private network, which will give me a static IP. And we have given extra RAM, 1600 MB, and 2 CPUs. Okay, and for memory and CPU, you have a sub block, config.vm.provider. If you're good with all the settings, just save it. Let's go back to our git bash and just do a cat to Vagrant file. You can see the content from here also, right? So there we did these changes. Private network, public network. Make sure there is no comment in front of it, no hash, otherwise it will be ignored. So now the VM is already running and I want to apply the change. So you have to do Vagrant reload, which will reboot the machine. And when it is coming up, it is going to read the Vagrant file and apply the changes. So we see that Ubuntu VM, it's powering off in VirtualBox and it has 1024 MB RAM. You'll see it's going to change to 1600 MB. Okay, that's pretty small to see, but check that out anyway. So network adapter. So we have NAT adapter, which is by default to any Vagrant VM. Then you have host only adapter. This is your private network, which will have static IP, and then you have bridge adapter, which will fetch IP address from the Wi-Fi router. Okay, the VM's up. Let's log in. Let's do Vagrant SSH. Okay, so I'm in. Let's see the RAM size, free-m. Yeah, you should see around 1600 MB. That's rounded up. ifconfig. Right, so ifconfig command is going to show all the network interface and their IP address, ENP0S8. That is the static IP that we set. This is the host only adapter. ENP0S9, this got the IP address dynamically from my Wi-Fi router. Okay, and this one is the NAT adapter. You can understand NAT adapter by looking at the IP address. It will have the same IP address for every VM. Okay, that was so good. Let's exit from here now. So let's check our Vagrant file once again. These are the changes we made. Static IP, IP from Wi-Fi router, some RAM change and some CPU changes. So that's all in this video. In the next video, we'll see provisioning and sync directories. So wrap this up and join me in the next video. In this video, we will be seeing sync directory and provisioning. So let's go to my directory, Ubuntu. Okay, now whatever I see in this directory, a Vagrant file and a log file, or let's create some more file, touch test file 123.txt. Okay, just some random name. And let me create a directory also. I'll say DevOps directory. Okay, you'll understand in a moment why I'm creating files and directories here. When you create a VM with Vagrant, it will sync this Vagrant directory where you have the Vagrant file, this directory, with /Vagrant directory in the VM. So I'm logged into the VM. If I go to cd/Vagrant to ls, you should see a striking similarities between both directories. That's because they are the same directories. Okay, so /Vagrant directory in the VM is same as the same directory. So this directory is mounted at /Vagrant path in your VM. That happens by default. Let's log in again. Okay, let's go to /Vagrant. We clear the screen. All right, let's test it one more time. Okay, so this is my shell. I'm logged inside the VM and in /Vagrant directory. Left hand side, you see the directory where the Vagrant file exists in my host operating system. Now let's create a lot of files here. I'll say bash files 1.20.sh. Okay, so I'm creating 20 files in the Linux VM. And you should see it magically appears in my host machine, right? Or if I do the same thing, if I delete all the files from here, right, shift delete, right, it should be gone from my VM also. This is called as sync directory in Vagrant. So it has two common use cases. One, you want to preserve your files in the VM where there is a chance of VM getting corrupted or deleted. Like you see over here, a CentOS VM that is in an aborted state. So if you happen to create some data in that, you can lose that data. So if you put that into the sync directory in /Vagrant, then it will be preserved in your machine, in your laptop. Like for example, if I have some data, let's prepare some data. So let's say I have written some scripts in this VM while I was working on my scripts or testing some automation. I've written some script. I was testing it over here and I have put it in /Vagrant directory. Now, if this VM goes into an aborted state, corrupted, or if I by mistakenly deletes this VM, then I don't need to worry about it. My data is still in my laptop, safe in this directory. And yes, if you're thinking that can I set my own directories, you can. That's what we're going to see now. So that's one common use case of sync directory. The other use case is if you're really writing scripts, you may be using some IDE like IntelliJ or PyCharm or Visual Studio or just Notepad++. So you can use that. You don't need to use the VIM editor, log into the machine, use the VIM editor. You can use your graphical editors over here, write your scripts, and then you can use it in the VM. Let me show you one quick example of a script. And don't worry, we're going to write a bash script in the next session. And you will understand what really I am doing. I'm just printing a message. Welcome to bash scripting. And I put some command over here. Let's say sudo apt update. Okay, so you see I can use a graphical editor and I save my script and I get in my VM and let's test the script. In order to run a shell script, you can give its absolute path or its relative path. We'll be learning that in detail, but this is just a simple example for now. DevOps script 1.sh. Okay, we got this error because the file that we have written over here, script, it is in Windows format. So down here, you see it says Windows CRLF. You double click on this and you select Unix and then save it. Let's go back to our script. Let's execute it again. And you see it's working now. So this is a very common error if you're using graphical editor from Windows and executing it in Linux. If you get that, then you change the format from Windows to Unix and that will work. Or if you're executing it in Macintosh, select that appropriately. So if you're a developer, you will be already aware about different IDEs and you must be using one. So you can continue using your IDE. You really don't need to use VIM editor when you're using a Vagrant VMs. Now that was about using a default sync directory /Vagrant. But if you want to create your own sync directory, you can do that. And for that purpose, we need to edit the Vagrant file. So the Vagrant file of our Ubuntu VM, let's open it. And over here, you see a line number 46. Now it could be a different line number for you, but for the reference for now, line number 46, here you see, uncomment this line. There's a setting config.vm.synced folder. And this is the host machine directory path, your laptop. And this is the VM directory path. Now VM directory will get created automatically, but the host machine directory you have to create. So let's say you have some data in your host machine, or if you want to preserve the data from the VM in the host machine in your laptop, create one directory. So I will say in my F drive, I will create a directory. I will name it as my shell scripts. And let's put some files in that. I have a script that I have written, whatever data you want to put. Okay, so that's the path of the directory F and /shell scripts. Let's copy the name. Well, if you put path like this, then you will get an error. So you have to do /. So if you're syncing from Windows to Linux, then the path separator has to be double. This is double /, and in Linux you have /. So if we are good with this, let's save this. Let's go to a shell. Let's log out from here, clear the screen, and to apply the change, Vagrant reload. Let's hit enter. Now while coming up, Vagrant will read the Vagrant file, see there is a new sync directory, and it will apply the changes. Okay, now if you read the output here, you see this Vagrant is a default sync directory, and this is the one that we created ourselves. Right, so you can give an absolute path or a relative path based on your requirement. And now I'm going to log into VM and get into this directory. Cd opt scripts, and we should see our script there. Now whatever I put in this directory, it will be preserved in my laptop, and even if I delete this machine or this gets corrupted, I don't need to worry about losing my data. And plus I can use graphical editor if I'm writing scripts. And that, my friends, are Vagrant sync directory. We have a similar concept in containers. In fact, there's so many concepts that we're learning in Vagrant will be almost similar to containers. And if you get all those concepts here, it will be very easy for you to follow along in the container world. So that's all in this video. I will see you in the next one where we'll be seeing provisioning. Hello and welcome. In this video, we will be talking about provisioning. Provisioning in Vagrant means executing your commands or scripts when your VM comes up. In some other technologies, these things are also called as bootstrapping. That means when the operating system is booting, we execute some commands, some scripts. So if you're bringing up a VM to configure something, so you bring up the VM by making changes to Vagrant file, you bring up your VM and then you log in, then you execute your commands. Instead of that, you can put all those commands in this section, in the provisioning section, and Vagrant will execute that for you. For this one, let's try the CentOS. You can do the same in Ubuntu VM also. So I have the CentOS VM. It is in corrupted, aborted state. I'm going to destroy it. Okay, so the VM is gone. There is no VM over here, you can see. Now I'm going to edit the Vagrant file for the CentOS 7th VM. Is the Vagrant file. Let's do it graphically. And that's our Vagrant file. Let's open it in Notepad++. And I will scroll down. I will make a few change. Give it an IP. And that's all. Let's scroll down. Let's go to the provisioning section. So this is the section for provisioning. So remove a hash from here, config.vm.provision. And there, and there, and there. Okay. So config.vm.provision, it says shell. There are other different provisioners, like you have Puppet, Chef, and we'll see all the other provisioners in the documentation later. For now, we just want to execute some shell command, so we'll keep that as shell. There's comma inline. So if you want to execute commands, you keep that inline colon, and there is an input redirection appended. And anything that you put between this minus shell and shell, some text over here, anything you put in between that, these commands will come as an input redirection, will execute on the shell. So let's put some command. These are Ubuntu commands. We have this as a CentOS machine. So we're going to run CentOS commands. Let's say yum install httpd wget unzip. You have to make sure that these commands are not interactive. They don't ask you any question. If they're asking question, it will fail. So if you don't give -y over here, it will ask you question whether you want to install these packages or not, and then the provisioning will fail. So I have to give here -y. And I think anything else that you want to execute, like I want to create some directories in opt. Maybe I also want to run free -m command. or the uptime command, whatever command you want, you can fit in this two sections in between this shell and this shell. And later we'll see some very good examples on this one with shell scripts. Let's save this and let's go to a shell. So now the VM is not created, it does not exist, and I just need to do vagrant up. If the VM is already running, then we have to do vagrant reload -- provision. We'll see that with Ubuntu VM. Okay, you see now the provisioning has started. It's saying running provisioner shell, and it is already running our yum install command. Okay, there, provisioning completed successfully. You also see the output of free-m and uptime command. So that is when the VM does not exist, but what if the VM already exists? Right, like this Ubuntu 18, we have already the VM running. So let's do some provisioning for that also. So let's open the Vagrant file for our Ubuntu. Let's uncomment that, and that, and that, and that. If you feel to enter some more commands, just new line and just enter whatever commands you feel like. I'll keep it only this much. This is apt Apache 2. This is anyways Ubuntu command, so this should work. Let's save this. Let's go back. Okay, now we should see the Vagrant file. Okay, now when I want to apply the change for an existing VM, so I'm going to say vagrant reload -- provision. You have to give this option. If you don't give this option, then it will not execute your provisioning part. Because mostly provisioning is for really bootstrapping when it comes up first time. If every time you reboot and every time it's executing your commands, then it can give you some weird issues. So of course, when you do vagrant reload, it will not execute provisioning. You give -- provision, then only it will execute your provisioning commands. Okay, there you see it's running the commands. Okay, let's log in Vagrant SSH. Okay, you should see the Apache 2 service running. Apache 2 is a web service. It will be serving web pages. There are default web pages that it serves. We can access it from the browser. So let's take either the static IP or this bridge IP, whatever you want. Let's go to our browser and let's give its IP address in the browser, and you should see a default Apache web page. So that is all in this video on provisioning. In the next video, we will be talking about setting up a web server, and also we'll have web server with database. So wrap this up and join me in the next video. So far in Linux, we have learned a lot of things. Basic commands, we understood Linux file system, filters, users, groups, sudo, software management, services and processes, and we learned so many other commands. Now we'll talk about server management. We'll be hosting up some servers in our Linux VMs, and this is for that extra practice to boost your confidence, or should I say apply whatever you learned so far. So this video is about practicing your Linux skills and also your Vagrant skills. First, we'll be setting up a website on CentOS 7. So launch a CentOS 7 VM. We're going to run HTTPD service on that, and we're going to put some HTML templates which we will be able to access from the browser, just like a website. This is going to be rather simple, but covering the principles of server management on Linux. Then we will be hosting WordPress on another VM. We'll be running Ubuntu 18 operating system in that VM. And this is called as a LAMP stack also, Linux, Apache, MySQL, PHP. So on Ubuntu, we'll be running Apache service, Ubuntu Linux VM, and MySQL service. PHP libraries will be setting up, and we'll be running a WordPress on that. So WordPress is a PHP application. It's a blog, or it's a way to set up your own blog on Linux machine by using Apache, MySQL, and PHP. So we'll do both of this exercise manually. And when you're doing that, you'll be working on your Linux skills, but you learn some automation also. So we will automate this setup by using Vagrant provisioning. So we'll write two Vagrant files, one for website, one for WordPress. And when we say Vagrant up, it will bring up our VMs with all the setup. Okay, let's get started now. So first, setting up a website on CentOS 7, and we will take a ready-made website available from twoplate.com. Like that, there are so many sites where you can get a template. So just open your browser, say twoplate.com, and if you already know any such website which has ready-made HTML templates, you can use that also. So there are multiple templates here. Wave Cafe, this is the latest one for now. So when we host our website, it will look like this. And you can download this template by clicking on the download button. But when you click on download, it's going to download in your local machine. We want it to be downloaded in the Linux VM. We'll see how we're going to do that. So let's go to a shell. So go to your Vagrant directory wherever you prefer. Let's create the directory named Wave Cafe. I will get into this directory and I will create Vagrant file, Vagrant init. I will get the box name from Vagrant Cloud. I want this one, Gatling Guy CentOS 7. Okay, that creates a Vagrant file and I'm going to edit it from here itself through vim editor. So we need primarily an IP address to access our website. So we can do this config.vm.network and we can give some site. I will leave that as it is 33.10. If you want, you can get a bridge IP or dynamic IP also. So we are hosting a website and we may need an extra boost of RAM. So let's give a little RAM setting. So for CentOS, it's 512 MB by default. If you want, you can make it to 1 GB, not mandatory. If you're running low on resource, keep 512 MB, that is fine. So that's all here. Let's save it and let's bring up our VM. Okay, it is up. I will log into it. Okay, let's be the root user, sudo -i. Clear the screen. And I'm going to first install the package httpd. I will also need wget to download the template and unzip because the template is in zip format. So I will need unzip. I would like to install these packages. These are our dependencies. Okay, packages are installed. Let's start our service, systemctl start httpd. And when we start, make sure you also enable it so it comes up at the boot time. Okay, now we will access the default page. Let's run ifconfig, or you can run the new command IP address show. Okay, so you can use your static IP or the IP that you got from your Wi-Fi router, whatever you wish to. Okay, it will not be accessible from this NAT IP, okay? So let's take that IP, let's go to the browser. And we should see the default Apache HTTPD page. Like in Ubuntu, this is the default page. In CentOS, this is the default page. Anyways, we are not concerned about defaults. Okay, now server data is located in var directory. That's what we learn in basics of Linux. Var www index.html. This is the directory where you can put your HTML templates, your HTML files, and it's going to serve those HTML pages when you access from the browser. The first file by default it serves is index.html. That's by default for Apache HTTP service. So if I create, oh, I don't have Vim. Okay, I'll use just VI. So let's put some text over here. As of now, no HTML. This is a sample website. Okay, you don't need to write any HTML template, just put some text, and then we'll restart HTTPD service. It's not mandatory for index.html to restart your service, but if you have so many linked files, then you need to restart. In any case, when we make configuration changes to the server, we restart it or reload the changes. Okay, now let's go back to our browser and let's refresh, and you see it's serving the default index.html file. Sorry, not the default, the one that we created. Now I know that's not the website you're looking for really. We need a website from twoplate.com, Wave Cafe, and if I click on download, it downloads in my local machine. I want to download it in the Linux VM through wget command. And for that, you may try to copy link, but that link is not a real download link. So you have to run F12 from this browser, or oh no, just F12 is fine. Just run F12 and you'll see a console getting opened over here. Make sure you're on the network tab here. This is the one mostly developer use to debug their website. So click on download. You really don't need to download. You can cancel the download. What you get is really a download link. Okay, you check in the headers and you should see a download link here. Okay, that's the download link. When I click on this, it's gonna access this link to download. And let's copy that and download this one. Let's do that in the temp directory. Let's go to the temp directory. We'll say wget and we paste the link. Hit enter. So it started downloading and it completed. Okay, so that's our zip file. We have to unzip it. So we'll use unzip command. Give the path. Okay, edit and unzip. So there is a directory 2121_wave_cafe, and you should see here your website data. Okay, including index.html file. We'll copy all this content. Give -r option because there are so many directories. Copy this content to var www.html. Okay, hit enter. It will ask you to overwrite index.html file, which is the one that we created. Say yes. Okay, now it's time to restart our service. Okay, check in var www.html. You have the files. Just check whether the service is running or not. If you make a mistake, the service may not start. Okay, so the service is running and now it's time to test. That's our IP. Let's refresh and we have hosted a website. Pretty simple, huh? Right, simple though, but it's covering the principles of hosting a service or a server in Linux. We set up the packages, dependencies. We start and enabled the service. We deployed artifact, this template, the zip file, that was the artifact. And then we bounced the service and it worked. Feel free to set up any other website if you'd like instead of Wave Cafe. If you want something else, try that. Or if you know some other website, you can try those also. Okay, that was pretty simple. And we're done with this. Let's do the next one now. Alright, in this video, we will be setting up a WordPress. In previous video, we have set up a static website. In this, it's going to be interacting with us. So let's create a new virtual machine for it. So I'll create a new directory, WordPress. Let's get into it. Let's create the Vagrant file. Ubuntu/Bionic64. This is the box we will be using. Let's open the Vagrant file. Okay, let's give it a static IP. So we'll uncomment this line. And we'll say this is 33.11. Just make sure the IP address is different from the previous VMs. We can also give it a bridge adapter, so we get an IP address dynamically as well. Let's save and quit this file. And let's bring up the VM, Vagrant up. All right, it's up. Let's see WordPress setup documentation. So we'll just search on the internet WordPress setup on Ubuntu, and you can find many websites. The one ubuntu.com, that's the one we will be using, but there are others like from DigitalOcean. They also have very good documents, but let's go for Ubuntu. Okay, so there are total 9 steps over here. All right, here it says a computer running Ubuntu server 20. You can use Ubuntu 20 box also in Vagrant, but it works on Ubuntu 18 as well. So let's see the steps one by one. First is installing packages. So let's log into our VM and start doing the setup. Okay, I'm in the VM, and let's be the root user, sudo -i, and let's take all this command one by one. Apt update, which will update the repositories. Okay, while this is going, let's see the other steps. So you have to install many packages here, and instead of giving all this in one line, they're using separator /. So you can see all this vertically. So /, and then you can enter the next package, /, then the next package, and finally when you say enter over here, then it will start the installation. So let's copy all this. And let's paste it. So I'm going to use just -y here. So it will install all it without asking any question. And let's see the next step. Okay, third steps, we create a directory. This is where we'll be hosting the website data, WordPress data. So we create a directory, we give it ownership of this user. This user will get created when you install Apache 2. And with curl command, we download the starball and we extract it at this location with this user ownership. So if we can copy all this command and paste it at once, that also we can do. Okay, here installation is completed. So if we take a look at all the packages, so we are using Apache 2, MySQL Server for the database, PHP, which is the language used by WordPress, and many other dependencies to integrate Apache, PHP, and MySQL Server. Okay, so installation is completed here. We will now paste our commands. Okay, that is done. Let's check ls-ld/srv www. So you see this directory is owned by this user and this group. If we check the content inside that, you should see a WordPress directory, and inside that, that's all the data from WordPress. And here we have index.php file. In the previous setup, we had index.html. So we will configure it so it serves index.php file to the browser. Okay, let's check the next steps. Okay, this is where we're configuring Apache to show WordPress pages. So we have to open this configuration file and put all this content. So let's do that first. Let's copy the path. etc apache 2 sites-available/wordpress.conf. Let's open this file. It's going to be an empty file. Now let's get the content. Just make sure you copy it carefully, everything. Let's paste it here. Okay, so this configuration basically says if anybody is accessing this machine on port 80, then it is going to serve the web pages from this directory, and this is the index.php file that will be served. So that's the virtual host setting in Apache 2. Let's save this. Okay, so the next command, A2N site WordPress. I will show you what this command will do. Let's paste it, run it. So it says enabling site WordPress. What that does is it creates a soft link, ls-l/etc apache 2 sites-enabled. In this directory you will see a link. This points to our configuration file, which is in sites-available. But this is the default configuration file. If you right now try to access the website, you will see a default Apache 2 page. But we don't want that. We will disable that. So we have few other commands. Let's enable the rewrite rules. And let's disable the default website. Now, if you check the link once again, you will see only one link. This is disabled. Okay, let's check the other steps. So finally, reload Apache. You can restart as well. Okay, but we are not done yet. So WordPress needs a database, and we have installed MySQL Server. We will configure the database. So we have the command to log into the database as root user, create a database named WordPress, and then create a user WordPress which can access the database from localhost, and this will be the password for the user. Then this SQL command will grant access for WordPress user on the WordPress database to select, insert, update, delete, create, drop, and alter tables. Then flush privilege, which is like refresh, and quit. Okay, let's do it one by one. First, the login, MySQL-u root, create database named WordPress. Next, creating the user WordPress and identified by, here we have to give the password. So I will keep it simple since this is just a local and test setup. Okay, then let's copy this to grant privilege to that user. Okay, we have made a mistake. So let's remove this arrows from here. Okay, this should be good. Let's run it. That worked. The problem was we copied this arrows. Okay, finally, flush privileges and then quit. Okay, so database is ready. Let's see the next step. Now we have to give information to WordPress about the database, how to connect to it. So we have the steps. First, we are going to copy this sample file. So that will be the configuration file. And here set command, search and replace. Search for this text and replace it with WordPress. That is the database name. So search for username underscore here and replace it with WordPress. That is the username of our database. And then the password that we have given. So let's run this one by one, not one at a time, one by one. Okay, the last one we need to be careful. So I copy it, but I'm going to open a notepad and paste it in the notepad. I will replace this your password with the password that we have given, which was admin123, and then copy it and paste it. Okay, next step is to open this file, and it is saying use nano editor. You can use nano or you can use vim also. It is saying you open it with this user. So your choice, you can use nano or vim. I will be using vim editor. It says find these following, delete them and replace it with what you find from the site. Okay, so we will do that. Let's open the file wp-config.php. Find these entries and just delete them. And let's get those entries from the website over here. Let's just copy it and let's paste it here. Let's save and quit this file. Let's also check the permission of this file since we made the change as root user. Okay, it is having the same ownership, which is good. Okay, let's see the next step. So it says now access it from this URL. It says localhost, but we have the IP address of the VM. We are not setting up locally on our machine. We set it up on the virtual machine and we have an IP address. We will access it from the browser. So let's get the IP address show. So we can use this IP 33.11 or we can use the bridge IP also. Okay, let's check it from the browser. And you should see this page install.php where we need to just select some simple options. Let's select the language English. Site title, I will say DevOps training. Username, I will say admin. And password, it has randomly generated. I'm gonna keep it simple. This is not the database password, by the way. So you can give something else just to make it a little different. My secret pass. And of course it says weak. I'm going to say I've confirmed using weak password. Let's give some email address. So if you don't want your site to be indexed, anyways, it's not on the internet, so it cannot be indexed. It's running locally in our computer. Alright, that's it. The setup is done. Let's click on login and let's log in with that user, admin, and our password. Let's log in. And we are in. So after this, it's your playground. Customize your site, create blogs, and just play with it if you want to. But that's what the setup that I wanted to show you. The previous one was a static website. This has a connection to the database. Whatever you post over here, create, post, comment, all those things will be saved. Your user detail, user login information, all those things will be there in the database. So this was an exercise to give you some more confident on your Linux skills. And that is all in this video. I will see you in the next one. Okay, so you have set up a website on CentOS 7 and you have set up a WordPress blog on Ubuntu 18. And we did all that manually. Now we are going to automate all that by using Vagrant provisioning. So we have all the steps to how to set up website and WordPress. We are going to put those steps, those commands in Vagrant provisioning section. And when we do that, that will be called as infrastructure as a code. So our entire infrastructure or virtual machine or operating system, provisioning, everything is in the code, the Vagrant file. We say Vagrant up and everything is provisioned. And this is a very important concept. Based on the same concept, we're going to learn so many other things in upcoming sessions. You must have heard about CloudFormation, Terraform, Ansible. CloudFormation, Terraform are infrastructure as a code for the cloud computing environment, like as we are using Vagrant for our local VMs. So let's get started. Let's write our Vagrant file, which will provision us website and WordPress. Okay, so let's get to some directory. I will create a directory called as infrastructure as a code. And let's get into this directory. Inside that, we'll create, same website and WordPress. Okay, let's first set up the website from toplate.com. So Vagrant init, let's create the Vagrant file first. Girlingai CentOS 7. Okay, let's edit the Vagrant file and let's use Notepad++. So infrastructure is a code, website. So rename, not rename, edit. Okay, so as usual, our settings, new IP address 33 dot, let's start with 15, this one, and also the bridge IP. You don't need to enable both, whatever you feel. And let's keep the RAM as same. Let's get into provisioning. Okay, so our first commands: yum install httpd wget unzip -y. Next we will go to the temp directory, and in the temp directory we'll download our template. So again, press F12, click on download, and in the network, see the link in the headers, copy that. Or if you want to set up any other website. Oh, for some reason it did not copy, it seems. Let's copy it once again. Oh no, it copied it the wrong place. Okay, let me remove that. That is weird. Okay, so when this gets downloaded in the temp directory, it will be with the name 212 underscore wave underscore cafe.zip. So let's copy that name and let's put the unzip command. And when we unzip, there should be a directory, and we'd like to copy everything from that directory. The directory name is same, or check download and extract, see the directory name. Otherwise you will get an error, path not found, var /html. Okay, now as I told you, your provisioning should not ask you any question, but if you run it multiple times, this zip file will already exist over there, and it will unzip, and this directory will already exist, right? So when it is doing the unzip, if the files are already existing, it will ask you a question: do you want to overwrite? Yes or no. If you don't want those questions to be asked, you can use an option -o in unzip. Okay, that means overwrite, don't ask me any question. So we'll take care of that before we get any error in the second provisioning. First, we'll never get this error. So no question asked in executing any command. Okay, next, systemctl start httpd and systemctl enable httpd. What I'll do, I'll copy these commands and put them before we do anything there, right? And here, let's remove enable because it's already enabled top. We will say here a restart, okay? Because when we deploy a new site, we would like to bounce our service, so we say restart, and that is all you need. If you wish to set any other website, you can do that. Like, let's test a new one. This one, Jimso. Scroll down, F12. So since we already have Wave Cafe, we can try something new. Okay, let's replace that. Again, this decision I leave up to you. Use whatever you want, but make sure you're giving the right directory name over here. Okay, download it, unzip it, and see what is the directory inside that. You have to give the right directory name. Okay, so just to show you a visible difference, when I'm accessing from browser, I'm setting up another website. Save. And that's it. Our infrastructure as a code is ready. If you want, you can make other changes like RAM or sync directories, but this should do the trick for now. Okay, I'm logged in here in Wave Cafe. Infrastructure as a code, website, and there you should have our Vagrant file. Okay, now let's do Vagrant up and wait for a minute or so. Okay, the setup's done. Let's get the IP address. I don't even want to log into this now, right? I don't even need to also. Let's get the IP address. Let's check from the browser, and you see there the site's up and running. Okay, and it's a shareable code. It's just a text file. I can send it to anyone. I can send it to you. You anyways have access to this file, right? So you can just use this Vagrant file. You say Vagrant up, and that's all you need to do. Hello and welcome. In this lecture, we will set up WordPress on Ubuntu 20, Ubuntu Server 20, by using Vagrant automatically. So we will not log in and execute commands to set up WordPress. We will ask Vagrant to do it for us. So first, let's create Ubuntu 20 VM with Vagrant. Open Git Bash and go to the WordPress directory where you have created it. And we will run the command vagrant init gearlingai /ubuntu 2004. This will create the Vagrant file. We will open this Vagrant file graphically through Notepad++. So let's go to File Explorer. Mine is in F drive, Vagrant VMs, Infrastructure as a Service, WordPress, and that's the Vagrant file. I right click, show more option, edit with Notepad++. First, let's give a static IP to this VM. So line number 35 there, remove the hash, and we will go to IP address. We'll say 33.19, or give whatever IP that you have not yet used to any VM. We'll save this. And all the WordPress setup command will be in the provisioning section. So let's remove these two lines, 67 and 68. Let's remove hash from this command shell and here as well. In between these two lines, we will put all our WordPress command, the Linux command, which will set up the WordPress. So let's go to the documentation again. Let's see it step by step. First, installing all these packages. So let's copy this. And let's paste it here. And make sure you give -y there, so it doesn't ask you any question. I will just put it in a same column. Okay, let's see the next command. Right, so these commands can be also directly put over there. So let's copy that, paste it. Again, let's fix this space, put it in the same column so it looks good. Let's check the next step. So next step is not as simple. We have to open this file and put all this content inside that file. Now Vagrant cannot do that. So we will create our own file with this content. We'll keep it in our host machine, and then we'll issue a command which will copy this file to the VM in the right directory, this directory, etc apache2 sites-available with the name wordpress.conf. So let's copy this content and let's go to Notepad. Let's create another file, paste all this content, and let's save this. We'll save it in the same directory where we have Vagrant file. Select the type as all types and give the name. I'm giving the name wordpress.conf and no extension. Select all types and save it. Now we have to put a command that will copy this file inside the VM. Now every Vagrant VM will have /Vagrant directory. /Vagrant. In this directory, we have the same content as we see in the host machine. So in this directory, whatever content we put, it will appear inside the VM in /vagrant directory, including this file, wordpress.conf file. So we'll say cp vagrant wordpress.conf, make sure the file name matches, and let's give the destination, which is this one. Let's copy that. So that should do the trick. Let's see the next command. Okay, these commands pretty simple. Let's just copy paste there. So copy all those 4 commands that you are seeing and just paste it one by one. So I will save this file. We have more steps, but let's just keep saving our work. Let's go to the next page, and here we have configuring database. So these are MySQL commands. First you need to log into MySQL as we did previously, and we get the MySQL prompt, and that's where we execute the commands. Create database, WordPress, create user, grant privilege to the user, flush privilege, quit. So these are SQL command. We can execute SQL command through shell also. I'll show you how that works. Let's copy this command, create database WordPress. So all these are shell commands. If you want to execute SQL query, MySQL query, then you have to say MySQL -u, the username, root -e, and then in single quote or double quote you can put the command. So it will log into MySQL database and then execute our MySQL queries. So let's keep doing that. We'll copy the SQL command, the MySQL command, and in single quote we give the SQL query, and here it says we need to put the password. So let's give the password. I'll just give admin123, and I will give here double quotes instead of single quote, because we already have single quote, and inside that again if we give single quote the command will be confused. So inside this we give the double quotes like that. Let's give the next command, which grants the privilege. Now in the documentation it is showing in different line, but we have to give that entire command just one line, as I have given over here. Grant, select, insert, update, delete, create, separated all by comma on WordPress .star. We're giving this Vagrant file in the resource section so you can verify. Next command is flush privilege. Okay, so those are all database command. Let's make it looks little separate. Let's make it little more readable. This is better. Let's see next step. Okay, next step is also just copying a file. This is from the same VM, so we can just copy this command and directly put it. Okay, now here there's the command using sed command. This is run by the user www-data. This will get created when we install the packages. This user gets created. So it's basically saying search for this string in the file and replace it with WordPress. This is for the database username. This is the database name. This is the database username, and this is the password. Now we need to make change here. We need to give the password admin123 as I have given. So let's copy all this. Let's paste it here. Oops. Copying it again, pasting it, and we have to make sure we replace this with the password that we have given, admin123. Let's fix these lines. Okay, next step. Now this step is really not mandatory. It again says open this file and make changes over here. Auth key, you have to put some phrase here. You can give the same phrase. If you want to do this, this will be similar commands. We have to give sed search for this content and replace it with our phrase, but it's not mandatory, so let's skip the step for now. The next step is to configure the WordPress. So I think we have done all the commands. It's time to save the file. Once again, verify all the commands. Have you copied it properly? Look for typographical error. If there are any, fix it. Save it, and then let's bring up this VM. Okay, back on git bash, our Vagrant file and that WordPress conf file. Let's look at the Vagrant file. We have all the commands, and let's do Vagrant up, and let's wait for a moment. So the setup is completed after a few minutes. It's time to verify. Now we really don't need to log into the VM. We have the IP address of the VM. Like I have given this IP address, and I will check that from the browser. Let's copy this IP and let's hit it. Okay, there we see the WordPress setup. It is asking us to do some post installation step. Let's do that. Continue with this English, give some subtitle. So DevOps training, let's give some username. Let's take some simple password for this. Now this password has nothing to do with the database password. This is just the website login password. I'm going to say I'm confirm the use of weak password. This is just, we are testing it. Otherwise you should really give longer password. Let's just put some email address and let's say install WordPress. Okay, this is done. Let's click on login and let's enter the username that we have set and the password. Let's log in. And we are in. This is working. Now you can go ahead and do all your tests, create posts, but our work is really done. So this is called as infrastructure as a code. I create a virtual machine and it also provision it with the service, and everything is in the code. Now this is beginning for you. So we're doing it on VM and we're executing shell commands. But be it a cloud instance or any other virtual machine or any tool you're using, the similar concept you have. You provision the infrastructure with the code. That is called as infrastructure as a code. And with this you can avoid human errors. You can save a lot of time. And the best part is you can version control your infrastructure. And you will learn all those concepts and tools in further lectures. That is all in this video. I will see you in the next one. Hello and welcome. In this video, we will be seeing multi-VM Vagrant file. How we can set up multiple VMs from one single Vagrant file. But before that, let me take you through Vagrant documentation. vagrantup.com/docs. So any tool that you're going to learn in DevOps will have a lot of settings, lot of steps, configuration, and it's almost nowadays impossible to remember all of that. And you should really also not memorize things because you have really good documentation today's time. And later also throughout the course, we'll be going through documentation. Once you have some basic understanding about a tool, then you can follow the documentation and you can do all the other steps that you're not aware about just following through the documentation. Or if the tools have released new features, new settings, you can find that out from the documentations. So Vagrant documentation gives you a getting started guide also, which is very common now in any tool. And you have step to quick start. It's around 1 minute. Specify a box, configure network, and few other getting started guide. Let's check quick start. So it will show you the prerequisites, how to get up and running, Vagrant init box name, and Vagrant up, Vagrant destroy to delete, and then you have Other settings also: initialize a project directory. So create a directory, get into that directory, run Vagrant in it. And you can check all this step by step. Most of the things we have already done. We're going to get into multi-VM Vagrant file. So let's check the documentation. So there is a documentation of multi-machine. Let's click on that. And you can read about this. I will tell you in very short. You have to create your own Vagrant file without Vagrant init command, just a plain text file, and then you give these settings over here. So we know the main block of code, it starts from there and completes over there. Inside that you have two more sub blocks: config.vm.define web, and then web. Here you have web.vm.box equal to box name. So this is one VM and this is another VM. Right here the name of the VM is web, here the name of the VM is db. And then you can put your other settings like network, sync directory, provisioning. Right, so let's copy this and let's go to the notepad. I'll paste it over here and I will save this file. We'll create a directory, not here, Vagrant VMs. So anywhere you choose, create a directory. I will name it as multi-VM and save the file with name Vagrant file, V capital, and make sure there is no extension. So select here all types so it does not get a .txt extension. Save this. Right, so this is the setting about the web VM. This is for the DB VM. And then there is a global setting also. You can also apply global setting like here config.vm.provision. Okay, this is a global setting. So it is going to execute command echo hello in both the machine. If you want, keep it, otherwise you can remove it. So box name, let's say, no, let's change the name first. We'll give it as web01. Here also we'll give web01. The setting name then should be web01. web01.vm.box. So let's get a box name. We'll take for web, let's say Ubuntu Bionic 64. So use your existing Vagrant file to copy the settings. And for MySQL, let's give db01. Okay, and let's get here the CentOS. So I'll use another box, CentOS/7. Or you can give your girlingai/CentOS7. Okay, if I just go to my git bash, if I say Vagrant up over here, it's going to bring up 2 VM. But let's add some more settings. And for that, I will use some existing Vagrant file that I have created previously. Ubuntu 18. So open this Vagrant file. So I'll do a little cheating over here. I will do copy paste work because I don't want to type all this, and you really don't need to. You already have the Vagrant file. Let's copy the network setting. Okay, let's change some other IP. Let's give 40.11 and make sure then you have the setting like that, web01 here, web01. Okay, in a multi-VM environment, if they're going to talk to each other, then it's very important you give them a static IP. db01, and of course the IP should be different. Let's take some other settings. Let's take some RAM setting. Okay, this one, let's copy this. Okay, so I will say here web01, and I really don't need this commented lines. I'm gonna remove them. Okay, let's do it for DB also. Okay, do it only if you have extra RAM size. I'll just keep it as 1024 and make sure you bring down the other VMs that are already running, otherwise it will consume all your laptop resource. Okay, there also db01. Okay, we can do some provisioning as well, and why not? Let's do some provisioning for DB and some provisioning for Web01. So for DB provisioning, I will get commands from our previous Vagrant file. I will not provision the entire WordPress like we did, just the database part. Feel free to issue whatever commands you like in the provisioning. So this is a CentOS machine, so no apt commands, so I'm going to remove that. I'll remove this entire line, I believe. I'll just say yum install mariadb server. That's the MySQL server package in CentOS 7. And after this, I'll remove this. And we'll say system ctl start mariadb, just mariadb, and systemctl enable mariadb, and that's it. We'll keep the SQL command. If it does not give us any error, we'll keep it as it is, or we'll remove it in the next provisioning. For web server, let's use provisioning from our Wave Cafe Vagrant file. Oh, that was not this. It was in this infrastructure as a code website and this Vagrant file. Yeah, let's take that. That was here for the CentOS machine. But our web server Vagrant file, this is for Ubuntu, so we need to change commands there also. Okay, I made the changes, and of course this one I need to change to Web01, and there also DB01. Okay, you have to be careful at this part. This is called as the end of the file. It starts over here and ends over there. This is the end of the file for our script. So there should not be any extra space or any extra character here. Okay, so if you have any extra character space over here, just remove it. Let's save the file and let's review once again. Let's check the opening and closing of all the statements. This is db01 db01.vm.provider. That completes over there. And then this is for the VM. Web01 vm.provider. That is for the VM. Okay, so opening and closing looks good. This is the entire code. That's for Web01. For Web01 vm.provider. So this looks good. Let's save the file and let's now test it. Okay, if everything is good, we should be able to bring up this VM or two VMs. Let's do Vagrant up. So if it says bringing up machine, then syntactically everything is good. Now the only issue may come in the provisioning. If there is some problem in the provisioning, it may fail over there. But you see Web01 is already coming up. And now we have proper names to our VMs. Web01 is our first VM, DB01 is our second VM. Okay, so everything completed successfully and we can now log into the VM by doing Vagrant SSH. And now we have to mention the name of the VM like Web01 or DB01 on whichever you want to log in. And you see we are in. Now you can make the test. for provisioning, but that's later part. Before that, we'll see how we're going to manage this multiple VMs. We know everything is going to be managed through the Vagrant file for the configuration, but Vagrant SSH, for SSH we have to be specific. We have to give the name of the VM, but other instruction like we want to halt, power off, so either we can give name. If we don't give name, then that means it's for both VMs or all the VMs that you have created. So if I say Vagrant destroy or Vagrant reload, if I don't specify the name, that means for all of it. But if I want, I can specify a particular VM also, like db01. Okay, same for Vagrant app and all the other commands. But Vagrant SSH, you have to specify a VM name, otherwise you'll get this error. So do all your experiments with these VMs, and once you are done, you can destroy them. So I will issue Vagrant destroy. I'm not specifying any name, that means it's for Web01 and DB01 both. So for destroying, it's going to ask question, are you sure? Yes for DB01. For web server, yes for web server. So that is all in this video. I will see you in the next one.